The Empire had ruled their sector of the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their warships patrolled 40 star systems. Their armies had crushed every species that stood against them. Their name was spoken with fear on 100 worlds. No one challenged them. No one dared. That changed on a quiet morning when a single ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their territory. The USS Resolute was a human battleship. It was not the biggest ship humanity had ever built, but it was powerful. Its hull was thick and dark, covered in armor that could survive direct hits from nuclear weapons. Its weapons could tear apart small moons. Its engines could outrun anything in the known galaxy. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the holographic display come alive with lights. Each light was a transmission. Each transmission was filled with panic. "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Torres from her station, "I'm counting 53 separate communications on local frequencies. They're all talking about us." Hayes frowned. "What are they saying?" "Most of it is untranslated, but the computer is working on it. The words it keeps finding are unknown vessel and maximum alert, and something that translates roughly to end times." Hayes looked at his tactical officer with raised eyebrows. "End times? We just got here." Ambassador Cole stepped forward from his position near the back of the bridge. He was a thin man with gray hair and calm eyes. His job was to handle situations exactly like this one. "Captain, I suggest we broadcast a peaceful greeting on all frequencies. We need to let them know we mean no harm." Hayes nodded. "Do it." The message went out. It was simple. The humans introduced themselves. They explained they were explorers. They said they came in peace and wished to establish friendly contact. The response was silence. Then the warships started arriving. Lieutenant Torres watched her screens fill with new contacts. 12 vessels incoming from the nearest station, 20 more from a planet in the inner system. "Captain, they're forming a perimeter around us." Hayes studied the display. The alien ships were smaller than the Resolute, much smaller. Their weapons were pointed at his ship, but they kept their distance. They made no move to attack. "They're scared," said Cole quietly. "They have 40 ships pointed at us," said Torres. "That doesn't look scared to me." "Look at their formation. They're staying outside what they think is our weapons range. They're not attacking because they're not sure they can win." Hayes considered this. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years. He had seen combat against pirates and rebels. He knew what an aggressive formation looked like, and this was not it. "Maintain position," he ordered. "Do not power up weapons. Do not make any sudden moves." The crew obeyed. The Resolute hung in space like a silent giant, while alien warships circled it like nervous wolves around a sleeping bear. Thousands of light years away, on the throne world of the Empire, High Commandant received the report. He sat in his command chamber, surrounded by screens showing data from the border region. His 4 eyes narrowed as he read the analysis. The unknown vessel was massive. Its power output was higher than anything in the fleet. Its hull composition was unfamiliar. Its weapons were. The analysts weren't sure. They couldn't identify them with certainty. That was perhaps the most troubling part. "What species is this?" demanded. His aide checked the records. "They call themselves humans, High Commandant. We have very little information about them. They appear to come from a distant region of the galaxy. This is our first direct contact." "One ship," muttered. "They send one ship into the heart of our territory." "Perhaps they are foolish, High Commandant. Perhaps they did not know whose space they were entering." Shook his head slowly. "Or perhaps they knew exactly whose space they were entering and did not care." He gave orders to strengthen the perimeter. He sent messages to nearby fleets to prepare for possible combat, but he did not order an attack. Not yet. He wanted to understand what he was dealing with first. Back on the Resolute, hours passed. The crew worked in shifts. They monitored the alien ships. They analyzed transmissions. They tried to make sense of the situation they had stumbled into. Lieutenant Park, the chief engineer, reported to the bridge with his assessment. "Captain, I've been studying their ships. Their technology is advanced, but not as advanced as ours. Their shields are weaker. Their weapons are slower if it comes to a fight." "It won't come to a fight," said Hayes firmly. Park nodded, but his expression was uncertain. "Yes, sir. I'm just saying if it does, we can handle it." Dr. Wright, the chief medical officer, had been listening from the doorway. "The question isn't whether we can handle it. The question is why they're so afraid of us. We haven't done anything threatening." "We exist," said Cole. "For some species, that's threatening enough." The ambassador had been reviewing the limited data they had on this region of space. He had found fragments of information suggesting they were conquerors. They had built their empire through force. They had never met a species they couldn't defeat. "They've never seen anything like us," Cole continued. "They don't know what to make of a ship this powerful arriving alone. In their experience, power means conquest. They're waiting for the invasion fleet." "There is no invasion fleet," said Hayes. "We know that they don't." The standoff continued through the night. The alien ships maintained their distance. The Resolute remained still and silent. Neither side knew what to do next. Then, as the ship's clock showed the beginning of a new day, a transmission came through. It was different from the others. It was directed specifically at the Resolute, and it was translated. "Unknown vessel. This is Senior Diplomat N of the Empire. We request permission to send a delegation to your ship for direct communication." Hayes looked at his bridge crew. Torres had her hand near the weapons console. Park was watching the power readings. Cole was already moving toward the communication station. "Tell them yes," said Hayes. "Tell them we welcome peaceful contact." The message went out. The response came quickly. A small shuttle detached from one of the alien warships and began moving toward the Resolute. Captain Hayes straightened his uniform and prepared to meet the aliens who thought he had come to destroy them. He hoped he could convince them otherwise. The shuttle landed in the Resolute's main hangar bay. The bay was large enough to hold 50 fighters. The small alien craft looked tiny and fragile sitting on the metal floor. Captain Hayes stood waiting with Ambassador Cole and a small honor guard. He had chosen his people carefully. They wore dress uniforms, not combat armor. They carried no visible weapons. Everything about their appearance was meant to say one thing: we are not here to fight. The shuttle's door opened. 3 aliens stepped out. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. They wore robes of deep purple and gold. The one in front carried herself with the confidence of someone important. "I am Senior Diplomat N," she said through a translation device hanging from her neck. "I speak for the Empire." Hayes stepped forward and extended his hand. "I am Captain Daniel Hayes. Welcome aboard the Resolute." N stared at his hand. Her 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that suggested confusion. In her culture, extending an empty hand was a gesture of surrender. It meant you were giving up. It meant you admitted defeat. Was this human surrendering already, or was he mocking her? She did not take his hand. Hayes lowered it slowly, realizing something had gone wrong but not understanding what. "Perhaps," said Cole smoothly, "we could continue this conversation in our conference room. We have prepared refreshments." N nodded stiffly. She followed the humans through the corridors of the ship, and with every step her unease grew. The Resolute was enormous. The hallways were wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side. The walls were lined with technology she did not recognize. Crew members passed them wearing simple uniforms, nodding politely, showing no fear. Why did they show no fear? Did they not understand what they were capable of? In the conference room, N sat across from Hayes and Cole. Her 2 assistants stood behind her, silent and watchful. Through the window, she could see the stars and the distant shapes of warships still maintaining their perimeter. "You have entered our space without permission," N began. "This is an act of aggression." "We apologize for any misunderstanding," said Cole. "We were charting new hyperspace routes. We did not know this region was claimed. Our maps showed it as unexplored." "Unexplored," N's voice was sharp. "They have ruled this sector for 3,000 years. And we come from very far away. Our species has only recently begun exploring this part of the galaxy. We had no records of your empire. This first contact is as much a surprise to us as it is to you." N did not believe this, could not believe it. No species built a warship like this for exploration. The Resolute was a weapon of conquest. Its very existence was a threat. "If you come in peace," she said carefully, "why did you bring such a powerful vessel?" Hayes answered this one. "The Resolute is designed for long-range missions. We travel far from home, through regions we know nothing about. We need to be able to protect ourselves." "Protect yourselves from what?" "From anything we might encounter, pirates, hostile species, natural dangers," Hayes shrugged. "We've learned it's better to be prepared." N studied the human captain. He seemed sincere. His body language showed no deception, but his words made no sense to her. In her experience, species that built powerful weapons used them to take what they wanted. Peace was what the weak begged for after they lost. "I would like to see your ship," she said. "If you have nothing to hide, you will allow this." Hayes looked at Cole, who nodded slightly. "Of course," said the captain. "Lieutenant Park will give you a tour." Park arrived a few minutes later. He was younger than the captain, with an easy smile and an enthusiastic manner. He seemed genuinely excited to show off his ship. "The Resolute is a Titan-class battleship," he explained as they walked. "One of 12 in the fleet. She's designed for extended operations in unknown space." They visited the engine room first. N stared at the massive fusion reactors that powered the ship. The energy output was staggering. With this much power, the humans could glass entire continents. "How long can you operate without resupply?" she asked. 5 years, maybe 6 if we're careful. The reactors are efficient, and we can synthesize most of what we need." 5 years. A ship that could fight for 5 years without returning home. The implications made N feel cold. They moved to the weapons deck. Park showed her the kinetic bombardment systems, the missile launchers, the point defense turrets. He explained how they worked with the enthusiasm of a child showing off a favorite toy. "These bobbies can punch through pretty much any shield we've encountered," he said, patting a massive cannon. "Not that we've had to use them much. Mostly they just sit here looking scary." "Looking scary," N repeated. "Yeah, turns out most pirates take one look at a Titan class and decide to find easier targets. We hardly ever have to actually fight." N thought about the 40 warships surrounding this vessel. She thought about what would happen if they attacked. The answer came to her with terrible clarity. They would die. All of them. And this human was talking about it like it was barely worth mentioning. They finished the tour in the fighter bay. Rows of small, sleek attack craft sat in perfect lines. Each one was armed with weapons that could destroy the shuttle that had brought in here. "Why?" she finally asked. Park looked at her with confusion. "Why what? Why do you build all of this? If you truly come in peace, why do you need so much power?" The engineer thought about the question for a moment. Then he shrugged in that strange human way. "I guess because we can. Humans have always built things. Big things, powerful things. It's kind of what we do. We see a problem, we solve it. We saw space, we built ships to explore it. We saw danger, we built weapons to handle it." He smiled. "We don't always think about whether we should. We just do it and figure out the rest later." N returned to her shuttle with her mind spinning. She had come expecting to find conquerors preparing for war. Instead, she had found something far more disturbing. The humans were not evil. They were not calculating invaders with plans for domination. They were simply humans, a species that built weapons of unimaginable power because they could, a species that wandered into the heart of an empire without understanding what they had done. They did not realize how dangerous they were, and that made them the most dangerous thing Anne had ever encountered. She began composing her report as the shuttle flew back to the fleet. The High Commandant needed to know what they were dealing with. He needed to know that everything was about to change. News traveled fast in the galaxy, faster than ships, faster than light itself. Within days, everyone knew about the human battleship. Traders carried whispers from station to station. Spies sent encrypted messages to distant governments. Underground networks buzzed with rumors and speculation. A single ship had appeared in space, a ship that made the Empire's fleet keep its distance, a ship that the mighty conquerors were afraid to attack. For some species, this news brought fear. Another powerful race meant another potential threat. The galaxy was dangerous enough already. But for others, the news brought something they had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The collective had once been a proud civilization. They had built beautiful cities on a dozen worlds. They had created art and music that was celebrated across their region of space. They had believed in peace and cooperation. Then came. The war lasted 3 years. They were not warriors. They tried to negotiate. They offered tribute. They begged for mercy. They gave them none. World after world fell. Millions died. The survivors were pushed to the edges of habitable space, forced to live on barren rocks and frozen moons. For 200 years they had hidden. They had survived. They had waited. Now finally something had changed. Was old by standards. He remembered life before the conquest. He remembered what it felt like to look at the stars without fear. When he heard about the human ship, he made a decision that could mean death for himself and everyone he cared about. He went to meet them. The journey took weeks, traveled on a small transport pretending to be a trader. He slipped past patrols. He bribed officials. He risked everything for a chance to speak with the humans. When his transport finally approached the Resolute, he sent a simple message. "I come seeking help. Please do not turn me away." Captain Hayes allowed the transport to dock. He met in the same conference room where he had received N, but this meeting was very different. Was small and fragile-looking, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. He walked slowly, as if every step caused him pain. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "I represent the collective," he said. "What remains of it? I have come to ask for your help." Hayes listened as told the story of his people, the beautiful worlds they had lost, the friends and family who had died, the generations spent hiding in the darkness, always afraid. "They do not conquer for resources," explained. "They conquer because they believe it is their right. They see other species as inferior, worthy only of serving or dying." Ambassador Cole leaned forward. "How many species have they conquered?" "Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Many no longer exist. They do not always leave survivors." The room was silent. Hayes thought about what he had seen of their fear of the Resolute, their massive fleet. He had assumed they were simply protective of their territory. Now he understood it was something darker. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Looked at him with those large, sad eyes. "The same thing every oppressed species in this galaxy wants. Freedom. We cannot fight ourselves. We do not have the ships or the weapons, but you do. One ship from your people has made the Empire hesitate. Imagine what a fleet could do." Hayes did not answer immediately. This was not what he had expected when he left Earth. He was an explorer, not a liberator. His orders were to chart new space and make peaceful contact with alien species. They did not include starting wars. But could he ignore what he had just heard? Could he look at this broken old man and tell him that humanity did not care about the suffering of others? "I need to contact my government," Hayes said finally. "This decision is not mine to make alone." Nodded, he had expected this. "I understand. I will wait as long as necessary." While Hayes sent messages to Earth, Dr. Wright dealt with a more immediate problem. Had not come alone. His transport carried 24 refugees, including children. They were thin and sick. Some had injuries from attacks. All of them were terrified. Wright set up a medical station in one of the cargo bays and got to work. She treated infections, set broken bones, and provided nutrition supplements to people who had been starving for months. A young girl sat on a cot, watching Wright with wide eyes. She spoke through a translator, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you really from Earth?" "Yes," said Wright gently. "Have you heard of Earth?" "My grandmother told me stories. She said humans came from a small blue world far away. She said they were different from other species." "Different how?" The girl thought about this. She said humans were strange. They fought each other more than anyone else in the galaxy, but they also helped each other more. She said humans could be the creatures in existence or the kindest. It depended on which ones you met. Wright smiled sadly. "Your grandmother was a wise person. She died when they attacked our station, but she told me something before she died. She told me that one day the humans would come, and everything would change." Wright did not know what to say. She finished treating the girl and moved on to the next patient, carrying the weight of those words with her. The response from Earth arrived 3 days later. Hayes read it on the bridge, surrounded by his senior officers. "They want us to avoid conflict if possible," he said. "But we are authorized to protect any refugees who request asylum, and we are not to abandon anyone who asks for our help." Torres raised an eyebrow. "That's pretty vague, sir." "I think that's the point. Earth is giving us room to make decisions based on what we find here." Hayes looked at his crew. "The question is, what do we find here?" Before anyone could answer, an alarm sounded. Torres checked her console and her expression hardened. "Sir, I'm detecting weapons fire near the edge of the system. A refugee convoy is under attack. Warships." Hayes did not hesitate. "Set course to intercept, maximum speed." The Resolute turned toward the battle, and the galaxy held its breath. The Resolute arrived at the battle in minutes. What Hayes saw on his display made his stomach turn. The convoy was small. 5 transports, none of them armed. They were running as fast as they could, but they were slow and old. The 12 warships chasing them were much faster. As Hayes watched, one of the warships opened fire. A transport exploded in a ball of flame. Just like that, hundreds of lives ended. "Open a channel to the commander," Hayes ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands were tight on the arms of his chair. The channel opened. A face appeared on screen. He was young for a commander, with fresh scars on his gray skin and a cruel smile on his face. "Human vessel," the commander said. "This does not concern you. These are escaped slaves, property of the Empire. We are simply collecting what belongs to us." "Those are civilian ships," said Hayes. "They are not armed. They cannot fight back. You just murdered hundreds of innocent people." The commander laughed. "Innocent? They exist to serve. When they refuse to serve, they die. This is the way of things." "Not anymore." Hayes leaned forward. "You will cease fire immediately. You will withdraw from this area. If you do not, I will stop you myself." The commander's smile grew wider. "You would threaten the Empire. One ship against our fleet. You are either very brave or very stupid. Last warning, back off or I will open fire." "You humans are weak. You associate with conquered species. You speak of innocence and murder. These are the words of prey animals, not predators." The commander gestured to someone off-screen. "All ships, target the human vessel. Show them what happens to those who challenge us." The 12 warships turned toward the Resolute. Their weapons powered up. Missiles launched from their tubes. "Torres," said Hayes quietly. Lieutenant Commander Tors had been waiting for this moment. She did not feel fear. She did not feel doubt. She felt only cold, clear focus. "Weapons hot, Captain. All batteries standing by." "Take them down." The Resolute opened fire. The first volley of kinetic rounds crossed the distance between the ships in seconds. They had never seen weapons like these. Their shields, designed to stop energy beams and plasma, shattered like glass under the impact of solid metal moving at incredible speed. 3 ships died in the first 10 seconds. Their hulls cracked open. Their reactors exploded. The crews never even had time to scream. The missiles reached the Resolute and ran into the point defense grid. Thousands of small turrets tracked each incoming threat and destroyed it. Not a single missile touched the human ship's hull. Tors worked her console with deadly precision. She selected targets, allocated weapons, adjusted firing patterns. Each decision was made in a fraction of a second. Each decision meant death for someone. Another 4 ships fell. Their commanders tried to retreat, but the Resolute was faster. Its weapons had longer range. There was nowhere to run. The remaining 5 ships scattered. They fled in different directions, abandoning each other, thinking only of survival. Tors picked them off one by one. The last ship was the commander's vessel. It was heavily damaged, leaking atmosphere from a dozen holes. Tors locked weapons on it and looked at Hayes. The captain stared at the crippled warship on his display. The battle had lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes to destroy 12 ships and kill thousands of enemy soldiers. It had been easy, far too easy. "They're trying to surrender," said the communications officer. "The commander is begging for mercy." Hayes thought about the transport he had seen explode, the hundreds of who had died while trying to escape, the smile on the commander's face when he called them property. Part of him wanted to finish it. Part of him wanted to make an example that would be remembered for centuries. But that was not who he was. That was not who humans were supposed to be. "Stand down," he said. "Do not fire unless they attack." The bridge was silent. Tors kept her weapons locked on target, but she did not fire. The crippled ship drifted, helpless and waiting. "Medical teams to the shuttle bay," said Dr. Wright over the intercom. "We have survivors coming in from the refugee convoy." Hayes stood up from his chair. His legs felt weak. "Tors, you have the bridge. I'm going to help with the survivors." He walked off the bridge without looking back. In the shuttle bay, chaos reigned. Rescue shuttles brought in by the dozens. Some were injured. Some were dying. All of them were traumatized by what they had witnessed. Hayes found Wright working on a child with burns covering half his body. Her hands were steady, but her face was pale. "He's going to make it," she said without looking up. "Most of them will make it, the ones who survived the initial attack anyway." "How many did we lose?" "The transport that was destroyed had 300 people on board, all dead." Wright finally looked at him. Her eyes were red. 300 people, Daniel, just gone." Hayes did not have words. He helped carry stretchers. He held the hands of crying refugees. He did what he could, which did not feel like nearly enough. Across the shuttle bay, Ensign Grant sat on a cargo crate, staring at nothing. She was 23 years old. She had graduated from the academy less than a year ago. This was her first deep space mission. She had just helped kill thousands of people. Chief Petty Officer Brooks walked over and sat beside her. He was 45, a veteran of the Mars Colony Rebellion. He had seen combat before. He knew what came after. "First time is always the hardest," he said quietly. Grant looked at him with empty eyes. They just exploded. 1 second they were there, the next. "I know. Does it get easier?" Brooks thought about lying. He decided against it. "It doesn't get easier, but you learn to carry it. You learn to remember why you did it." He nodded toward the refugees being treated across the bay. "Those people are alive because of what we did. That would have killed them all. We stopped that." But we killed people too. We did, and that matters. It should matter. The day it stops mattering is the day you should walk away. He put a hand on her shoulder. Feel what you're feeling, don't fight it, but don't let it break you either. You did your job, you saved lives, that's worth something. Grant nodded slowly. She did not feel better, but she felt something other than empty, and for now, that was enough. High Commandant received the report of the battle an hour later. He read it 3 times, certain there must be an error. There was no error. 12 warships destroyed in 7 minutes, 1 human vessel, no damage. Finally understood what N had tried to tell him. The humans were not invaders looking for conquest. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that could destroy empires without even trying. And he had just given them a reason to. The aftermath of the battle changed everything. High Commandant called an emergency meeting of the High Council. For 3 days they argued. Some demanded revenge. They wanted to gather every ship in the Empire and crush the human vessel. Others warned that this would be suicide. The humans had destroyed 12 warships without taking a scratch. What would happen if they sent 100 ships, or 1,000? In the end, reason won over pride. The officers who had ordered the attack on the refugee convoy were arrested. Their actions had been unauthorized. They had provoked a conflict the Empire could not win. Himself traveled to the Resolute to negotiate peace. The trip took 2 days. The High Commandant spent most of it staring out the window of his shuttle, thinking about everything he believed and everything he had done. For his entire life, he had served the Empire. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed species that resisted rule. He had believed this was right. He had believed power gave them the right to take whatever they wanted. Now a single human ship had shown him how wrong he was. Captain Hayes met him in the hangar bay. The human looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, but he stood straight and his voice was steady. High Commandant, welcome aboard. Did not know how to respond. In his culture, the weak came to the strong. The defeated begged for terms. Yet here he was, a leader of the most powerful empire in the sector, standing in the shadow of a foreign ship, hoping he would not be destroyed. Captain Hayes, he said finally, I come to discuss peace. They talked for hours. Ambassador Cole led the negotiations with patience and skill. The terms he proposed were simple but revolutionary. They would stop their conquest. No more invasions. No more subjugating other species. The worlds they already controlled would have a choice: remain part of the empire as equal partners or become independent. The and other oppressed species would be given representation. Their voices would be heard. Their rights would be protected. And the humans would establish trade routes and diplomatic relations with everyone, including the. They were not asking for surrender. They were not demanding tribute. They were offering something the Empire had never considered: partnership. Listen to all of this with growing amazement. You could destroy us, he said. You could take everything we have. Why do you offer terms? Cole smiled. Because that's not who we are. We didn't come here looking for war. We came looking for friends. If we can find them, even among former enemies, then this whole situation becomes a success instead of a tragedy. The negotiations continued for weeks. Representatives from the and other species joined the talks. Dr. Wright worked with alien physicians to establish medical exchanges, sharing knowledge that could save millions of lives. Lieutenant Park helped design new security protocols that would prevent future incidents. Sat in many of these meetings. He watched the humans interact with his former conquerors and struggled to believe what he was seeing. For 200 years, his people had dreamed of vengeance. They had fantasized about the day that would fall. They had imagined fire and death and justice. Instead, they received something better. They received peace. More human ships arrived in the sector, but they were not warships. They were cargo vessels carrying food and medicine. They were science vessels studying the stars. They were diplomatic cruisers carrying ambassadors to a dozen worlds. They watched with confusion and suspicion. They had expected demands. They had expected exploitation. Instead, the humans established trade routes that benefited everyone, including their former enemies. They built stations where species could meet and exchange ideas. They created opportunities that the Empire had never considered. Senior Diplomat N requested a private meeting with Captain Hayes before the Resolute departed for home. They met in the same conference room where they had first spoken, weeks ago. So much had changed since then. "I have a question," N said, "one that has troubled me since the beginning." "Ask it," said Hayes. "Why are humans the way they are?" She spread her hands, searching for words. "You build weapons that can destroy worlds. Your ship defeated our fleet with ease. You have power beyond anything we have encountered. Yet you use this power with such reluctance. You offer mercy to those who attack you. You help those who cannot help themselves. Why?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment. He thought about human history, the wars, the genocides, the moments when his species had been truly cruel, truly terrible, but he also thought about the other moments, the sacrifices, the kindness, the times when humans had chosen to be better than their worst impulses. "A long time ago," he said, "humans only had one world, Earth, and we almost destroyed it. We fought each other constantly. We built weapons that could wipe out cities. We came close to ending everything. What stopped you?" "We did. We made choices. Not perfect choices. Not always. But enough of us enough times chose something other than destruction. We learned, slowly and painfully, that power without wisdom is just another word for disaster." He looked at N with tired eyes. "We built the Resolute because we never want to be victims again. We know what the universe can do to the weak, but we also remember what we did to each other when we were strong and stupid. We don't want to be that anymore. We want to be better." N considered this. "And if someone threatens you, if someone will not accept peace?" "Then we fight. We're very good at fighting. We don't want to be, but we are. The hope is that we never have to prove it again. The hope is that strength can be a shield instead of a sword." Hayes smiled slightly. "Maybe that's naive, but it's what we're trying to be." N stood and did something she had never done before. She extended her hand, palm up, in the human gesture of greeting. Hayes took it and shook it gently. "Safe travels, Captain Hayes," she said, "and thank you for showing us there is another way." The Resolute left the sector 2 days later. Its mission was complete, though not in any way anyone had expected. They had charted new space. They had made first contact. They had stopped a war before it could truly begin. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Captain Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the stars blur into streaks of light. Behind them, the Empire was changing. They were rebuilding. Dozens of species were discovering that they were no longer alone. The ripples spread outward, touching world after world, life after life. They were no longer ripples of panic. They were ripples of hope. And hope, Hayes realized, was the most powerful weapon of all.